us, verse 4. He who sits in the heavens shall laugh. There are 4 times that it says the Bible that God laughs. This is one of those 4 times. We'll look at another one in just a minute. The Lord shall hold them in derision. In other words, this word derision means to scorn or mock. Basically, God is going to make fun of them because they think they can stop His plan. Do you remember when Elijah had the false prophets and they were all trying to call down fire from heaven? And they couldn't call down fire from heaven, and they started cutting themselves. That stuff's been going on a long time. There's nothing new with that. That's demonic. They started cutting themselves because they worship demons. And so all of a sudden, they're out there on the plain, and Elijah says a few things to them. He says, in the Hebrew it says, maybe your God's asleep. Yeah. He starts mocking them. He said, one of the suggests that he's gone on a vacation. And another one in the Hebrew seems to suggest he might be on the toilet. He starts mocking them. Now, let me show you how big God is. Because these false prophets, they deceive the people. And you better be careful because that's what's going on in the land today. And some of them are in the so-called Protestant church who are saying things like, all this stuff's already happened and that all this was meant. That we're not. So you got to be careful. You got to stay in the Word. But the Bible says He soaked the sacrifice, poured water in it before He called on God. The reason He done that is because God was not only going to testify to the people, most of the people were duped. They were duped, they were deceived, because these false prophets would have fire tunnels and they would run fire up those tunnels and light the sacrifice, making the people think that some false god had lit that sacrifice. So when Elijah said, fill it full of water, all those false prophets knew that there wouldn't be no fire coming up those tunnels. So God was testifying. And that's what God's getting ready to do with Israel. He's going to testify to the whole world that He's God. And that there's none. So when He called fire down from heaven, the sacrifice was consumed. And everybody knew that God was in control. Now, that's what's going to happen again. Because when this is over, the world's going to realize that God is who He said He was and that Jesus is the only way and He's the Son. But even after that, we read about in Revelations where the Bible says they'll shake their fist at God and curse Him. We got people like that in this country. We have people like that in this country that are so twisted and so I don't believe there's near as many atheists as they say. Paul said nature itself teaches there is God. He said that they chose not to retain God. They cast Him off out of their thinking. So most people there's very few atheists. But what we really deal with is people who don't want any authority in their life. And they want to do it their way and not God's way. We got to be on guard for that.